You got the audio going okay?
We can hear you, Dick.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Hey, good evening.
Hello. Hello.
In the afternoon, and then the Super Bowl's.
I hear you.
The regular meeting of the St. Joseph County Council, February 8th, 2022, is now called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation, which will be given this evening by Councilman Mark Catanzarite.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic,
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty, and justice.
liberty, and justice for all.
Dear Lord, thank you for the ability for us to meet freely tonight here at the St. Joe County Council, for all the liberties we have. We thank those who are in service to us, the military, our law enforcement officers, the firefighters, paramedics, and especially the nurses and physicians who have helped us get through this difficult time in our country. We ask you, Lord, to continue to bless them and bless all of us as we deliberate tonight and make these decisions which impact our community. We ask all these favors in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
He's done.
Thank you very much, Councilman Catanzarite.
You're welcome.
Next, we have petitions, communications, miscellaneous matters. Ms. Hess.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to nominate for appointment. We have appointments for Robert Vance Correll for the St. Joseph County Housing Authority, and a reappointment for Casey Gum for the New Carlisle Olive Township Library Board.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations at this time? Hearing none, do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Robert Vance Correll is appointed to the St. Joseph County Housing Authority Board, and Casey Gum is reappointed to the New Carlisle Olive Township Library Board. Next, we have approval of the minutes.
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes from our January 11th, 2022 meeting are approved. Report from the county auditor.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Report from the county commissioners. No report. Report from any council special committee. Hearing none. Next on the agenda, we have first readings. Clerk, will you please read bill number 2822?
An ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property located at 17871 State Road 23 and 17847 State Road 23 from OB Office Buffer District to O Office District. Petitioner Dale R. Devon and Christine K. Devon.
Thank you. Bill number 2822 is assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee. That concludes first readings for this evening. Next on the agenda, we have salary amendments. Clerk, will you please read bill number 1022?
An ordinance amending Ordinance 7620, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2022. Petitioner, Information Technology.
Ms. Hess, committee report, please.
Mr. President, bill number 1022 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
I guess I could address this.
My apologies. Andy Castelmi, President of the St. Joseph County Board of Commissioners. I have having some trouble with my internet connection. Is this the position for the IT department?
Yes.
Right. So what we are doing is we are moving Scott Semp, who is our current director of IT. We're transitioning him into a project manager. We've got lots of ongoing projects. We have the ERP, which is still ongoing and needs a great deal more resources committed to it from a county standpoint. And Scott can play that role. Then we have some other projects as well that we anticipate him taking care of and being able to focus on over the next few years. Be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing on Bill 1022. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the bill? Hearing on the public hearing on Bill 1022 is now closed, so I hear a motion.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion to pass Bill number 1022 is made by Councilman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on 1022? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Kennerecki,
Yes.
Mr. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 1022 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill, bill number 11?
1122, an ordinance amending ordinance 7620, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2022. Petitioner, County Council.
Ms. Hess, committee report, please.
Mr. President, bill number 1122 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Yes.
Mr. President, this is Steve Dalton. Would you like me to deal with this one?
Yes, sir.
All council members, Steve Dalton, financial advisor with offices in Maryville, Indiana. You'll recall that during the budget process, it was your desire to have your executive secretary's salary match the executive secretaries with the same position in the other departments in the building. This is a clerical error that was not caught during that budget process to have your executive secretary match those other departments.
Thank you. Any questions from council for Mr. Dalton? Thank you, sir. Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing on bill number 1122. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the bill? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on 1122?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second? Motion to pass bill number 1122 was made by Councilman Kennerecki. It was seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you take the roll?
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Katanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki,
Yes.
Mr. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 11-22 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill on the agenda, bill number 722?
Yeah, an ordinance amending ordinance 7620, the same being ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2022, petitioner coroner.
Under the Human Services and Criminal Justice Committee, Mr. Krasinski, committee report, please, sir.
President Morton, this comes to the council without a recommendation.
Thank you very much. Petitioner?
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Jordan, the St. Joe County Coroner. My office is around the corner on the 4th floor here. This is in reference to me having 2 chief deputy coroners that are full-time. They've had a full-time deputy, 2 chief deputy coroners for at least since 2019, and this is just to get them up to speed with the minimum wage that you've proposed.
Any questions from council? Hearing none, we'll open a public hearing on bill number 722. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Okay, sorry.
Yes, Randy Magdalinski, Chief Deputy Coroner with offices here in the coroner's office on the 4th floor. I guess we're up here turning around and trying to fix a problem that was made that was unaware to us that we even had a minimum wage, and the previous coroners were getting that minimum wage. When we turned around and ended up taking office, we had a budget number that we thought we were working under, and we tried adjusting the salaries according to that number. Stupidity on my part for not realizing that there was a minimum wage for full-time employees, and the coroners and myself qualified for that. My error. All we're trying to do now is fix something that was established and passed by this council for that group of employees, including myself. Hopefully it'll reflect the same into the new year of 2022. We're fitting into the full-time employees that we are and we're hired under by the HR department. And just so you know that basically my average on-call hours for the month minimally are 208 hours a month. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone that wishes to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on 722. Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 722 was made by Councilman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Katanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki,
Yes.
Mr. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 7-22 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill, bill number 8-22?
An ordinance amending ordinance 7620, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2022, petitioner PSAP.
Mr. Krasinski, committee report, please, sir.
President Morton, this comes to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. Petitioner?
Good evening. Raymond Schultz, Executive Director of PSAP with office at 58266 Downey Avenue. Brought before you tonight is a request to fill a budget line that we had presented to the Executive Board, presented to Council, but failed to fund in the budget, and that's my mistake for not catching it until it was too late to fix it during the regular process. But it's an employee that we had calculated into health insurance, and taxes, retirement. We just didn't fund the line item. So requesting for the PIO/community educator to be funded.
Thank you. Any questions from council for the petitioner? Hearing none, I'll open the public hearing on Bill 822. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on Bill 8-22. Do I hear a motion?
Move for passage.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass Bill number 822 was made by Councilman Canaricki, and it was seconded by Councilman Catanzarite. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Kennerecki.
Yes.
Mr. Root. Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that Bill number 822 is passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill on the agenda, Bill number 922?
An ordinance amending Ordinance 67620, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2022, Petitioner Health Department.
Mr. Krasinski, committee report, please, sir.
President Morton, this comes to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. Petitioner?
Amy Rupi, Administrator with the Department of Health with offices on the 8th and 9th floor of the County City Building. And we have received a grant from the Indiana Department of Health to employ 2 community health workers for a total of 2 years each to put out into our community to help reduce infant mortality.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Hearing none, we'll open a public hearing on Bill number 9-22. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on 922?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass Bill number 922 was made by Councilwoman Hess, seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further council discussion on 922? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Kennerecki.
Yes.
Well, how will we know when it's the
Mr.
one
Root.
about them?
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
And Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Let the record show that Bill number 922 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Next on the agenda, we have public hearing, public comment on fiscal matters. All financial issues were heard and discussed at our January 25th, 2022 committee meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of any financial issue on tonight's agenda? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of any financial issue on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, public comment is now closed. Clerk, will you please read Bill number 622?
An ordinance appropriating and transferring monies for the purpose herein specified for the several departments herein listed of St. Joseph County government.
May I have a motion on Bill number 622?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion to pass Bill number 622 was made by Councilwoman Hess and was seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Kennerecki.
Yes.
Mr. Root.
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Let the record show that Bill number 6-22 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Next, we have public hearing and public comment on the Hotel Motel Fund, Bill number 1622. Clerk, will you please read that bill?
An ordinance appropriating monies for the purposes herein specified for the Potawatomi Zoo of St. Joseph County.
Ms. Hess, committee report, please.
Mr. President, Bill number 1622 comes with the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
I can always
Sorry.
talk.
Yep.
Good evening. Josh Siska, director at the Potawatomi Zoo. As I said, this is an allocation of hotel motel tax that was allocated to the zoo a couple years ago for continuing with our master plan. We were able to successfully raise over $4.5 million this past year for the giraffe exhibit. And what this is doing here, this last little bit of funding, is paying off that giraffe exhibit, which was part of that master plan.
Thank you. Any questions from council for the petitioner? Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing on bill number 1622. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on 1622. Do I hear a motion?
Move for passage. Second.
Motion to pass bill number 1622 was made by Councilman Kanaricki. It was seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Root?
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski?
Yes.
Mr. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. File?
Aye.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki?
Yes.
Sorry, I went out of order. Okay, Mr. Kenrecki, yes. Mr. Catan's right.
Yes.
And Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 1622 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Next is a public hearing, public comment on American Rescue Plan Fund. We will have a combined,
1322 next. 1322.
Jeez.
Oh, I see. Got it. All right.
we will have a combined public hearing and a separate vote on bill number 1322, 1422, 1522, 1722, 1822, 1922, 2022, 2122, 2222, 23, 22, 24, 22, 25, 22, 26, 22, and 27, 22. We will have a combined public hearing and a separate vote on these bills from American Rescue Plan Fund. Ms. Hess, committee report on the bills I just mentioned, 13 through 27.
Mr. President, those bills come to the full council with favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton, would you like to comment on these bills?
I would be happy to. I would say the committee did a yeoman's job going through millions of dollars of requests. And as you all know, we're only halfway through because we'll get to start this process back up in the summer. But good work. And to all the applicants that were successful, thank you for the projects you've proposed.
Thank you very much. We will now open a public hearing on Bill 1322, 1422, 1522, 1722, 1822, 1922, 2022, 2122, 2222, 2322, 24, 22, 25, 22, 26, 22, and 27, 22. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of either of these bills? Does anyone wish to speak? Oh, I'm sorry. Please come forward.
Sheila McCarthy, Director of Motels for Now, 744 South Main Street. Our Lady of the Road. I want to again thank the council for your leadership, for your vision in seeing that tents are no way for a person to live, that doorways are not an acceptable place for people to stay, for saying yes to our Region's First Housing First program, which has proven itself to be tremendously successful. In that 75% of the 450 people that have come to stay with us have found stability in the motel and either remain there or have moved on to better options. The hope that is in someone's eyes when they are able to have a place from which to move forward from, when they're able to get a job for the first time in many years, when they're able to really think about having a place of their own is something tremendous that, again, I want to extend the invitation for each of you to come visit and see the progress that's been made over the last 10 months since you've last been out to Motels for Now. The generational impact of this program is tremendous. In the next year, we expect to have ended chronic homelessness in St. Joseph County, in that we have identified every person that's experienced chronic homelessness. We've reached out to them, we've housed almost all of them, some more than once, and that there's opportunities now through the Hope Avenue apartments that will be opening in the next couple of months, that there's places to move people into, that there's permanent supportive housing that's coming available in the next few months, and that many people from the motel will be able to get into a better place. That wouldn't be possible if there wasn't a place for them to store their documents, their social security card, their birth certificate, their ID. Having a bedside table, having a bureau makes all the difference. Having a place you know you can come back to so you can go out and do that difficult work of getting your documents that are necessary for housing is really impactful. So that's what we're looking forward to in this year as we set up plans for a permanent low barrier intake facility, that we're committed to ending chronic homelessness here in St. Joseph County. To say a bit more about that, I'd like to introduce you to our social worker, Eliana Armenfelder.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Hello, my name is Eliana Armenfelder. I live at 4010 Irish Hills Drive, apartment 2D, 46614. I'm a social worker at Motels for Now. I work with our guests to help them find long-term housing. I do this work because I believe that everyone should have a roof over their head, no matter what's going on in their life. This is part of a housing-first approach to homelessness, which means prioritizing housing before other goals like getting a job or addressing addictions. When a person experiences a crisis, such as losing their housing, it's very hard to focus on anything other than immediate survival. Sometimes it takes a few months for someone to regain enough stability to make progress on their goals. One example out of many people I've worked with is a woman I'll call Kim. When she came to Motels for Now after sleeping in her car, she didn't have custody of either of her children. She was using synthetic marijuana frequently and had 2 volatile relationships within 4 months. After being at the motel for 6 months, she had left her abusive relationships and her son had returned to live with her. I started working more closely with Kim in June when Section 8 vouchers became more available. We helped her get 2 separate vouchers. The first one had expired due to lack of available housing, and helped her manage the medical care she needed when she lost most of her vision due to a retinal bleed. Finally, this fall, we helped her move into a house just in time for Kim and her son to celebrate Thanksgiving there. Since then, we've continued to keep in touch to help with landlord communication and other details, which she continues to get better at. She's stopped using synthetic marijuana, and her chronic kidney disease has significantly improved. She's working with DCS to regain custody of her daughter and has more visits with her. A big change from being on the verge of losing parental rights this summer. She's also started to collect clothes to give away and find other ways to help people who are in the same position she used to be in. I don't want to minimize Kim's role. She did the hard work of getting sober. But I believe that if we as a society had decided that Kim wasn't worthy of help because she couldn't pass a drug test, she would still be homeless, she would have lost custody of her children, and her health would have continued to decline. Who could make all those changes alone? Who could figure out Section 8 and the housing market while not knowing if their family would ever be together again? Motels for Now is a place where people can start to heal from the trauma of homelessness and get help with the complicated and time-consuming work of housing applications. It would be incredibly hard, if not impossible, to find people and get these things done if they were living in tent cities shoved from empty lot to empty lot. Please give us time so we can give more people the stability and help they need. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Lauren Waggy, and I live at 59310 Linden Road, South Bend. 40 years ago, I was a house parent at a privately owned, privately funded 2-unit house for the homeless to give them a base to put their lives back together, similar to what Motels for Now is doing. It was in a county in a state next to Indiana that boasted of being the 3rd wealthiest county in the nation. It also denied that there were any homeless in that county. I've since moved here, and I am proud to live in St. Joseph County, where we acknowledge and address the problems of the homeless, and we wrestle with the difficult issues surrounding that, knowing that there aren't easy answers to this. But together we can touch the lives of our brothers and sisters, judging their decisions and life situations only to assist them to a better life, not to condemn. When we assist the least of these in our community, we are a better, stronger people of St. Joseph County. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of these bills? Is there anyone that wishes to speak in opposition of these bills? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
My name's Amy Drake. I'm from Granger. I don't know if this is appropriate time to do this. I just actually have a question, and I don't know that you are required to answer it, but because this is a public place, I thought maybe you could. For the behavioral scientists for the health department, for $130,000 over 2 years, I'm curious what that behavioral scientist would do for the county. So if it's possible to get an answer, I'd just like to.
Dr. Reinhardt, would you like to comment on that question?
You already did that last meeting.
Bob Winters, Health Officer, St. Joe County Department of Health, offices on the 8th and 9th floor. I'd encourage Ms. Drake to read the minutes of the committee meeting. We went through this, and I responded to multiple questions, and would happy to respond to questions again this evening. In short, In short, we all recognize that health to a large degree is determined by social determinants of health. Where one works, lives, prays, plays, gets their recreation, etc. All of this, to a large degree, determines the health of an individual and the individual's community. Oftentimes, with almost every single health condition that we face, be it cancer, heart disease, infectious disease such as COVID, etc., one has to look at and analyze these social determinants of health in order to optimize the health of any given individual or community. It is a socio-behavioral scientist who has the skills to help us as a health department do this analysis, do the reporting, collect the data, and go through the iterative process that is always necessary in any attempt that we make to improve the health of the community and of individuals. The social behavioral scientist is, as I responded to last meeting, is going to be a PhD level individual, and my expectation is at an associate professor level. We are looking at two different options here: one, to hire an individual, him or herself, at that level, or contracting with one of the universities to hire essentially the same, whereas it may be a combination of a couple of individuals who would be able to provide these services, but at a PhD level. Happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Kanareki?
Doctor, just briefly, so this person would help identify areas and ways in the county where the health department could make better use of resources. Is that a little bit of a takeaway?
Make better use of resources, be more efficient, and be more effective in the use of the resources that we have. That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Reinhardt? Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition of these bills? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed on Bill 1322, 1422, 1522, 1722, 1822, 1922, 2022, 2122, 2222, 23, 22, 24, 22, 25, 22, 26, 26, 22, and 27, 22. May I have a motion on Bill number 1322?
Move for passage. Second.
Motion to pass Bill number 1322 was made by Councilman Kanareki. It was seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further comments from any council person on 1322?
Good morning.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Just want to verify with Mr. Dalton. I know he was working on the agreements for the not-for-profits that are receiving these funds. Mr. Dalton, could you briefly speak to that?
Did you want me to speak just to this specific bill, Mr. Tanzarite, or all of them?
This one doesn't fall under.
This one is not a matching because it's
okay.
this is the county department.
I'm sorry, we're voting on one, not all. Okay, yeah.
It's all right.
It was more for the not-for-profits. I guess we can wait till that comes up. Thank
Okay.
you. My error.
Any other comments from any council member on 1322? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Kanareki.
Yes.
Mr. Root. Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 1322 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, I'm sorry, may I have a motion on bill 1422?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second? Motion to pass bill number 1422 was made by Councilman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further comments on this bill?
I should point out there's a Scrivener's error, I believe. And Mr. Dalton, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and Ms. Prewat, but where it says at the very bottom, $350,000. Should that be in there twice or just once? Okay, just once, so just want to point that out. That's it.
Any other comments on 1422? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Katanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Kennerecki,
Yes.
Mr. Root, Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 1422 is passed by a vote of 8-0. May I have a motion on bill number 1522? Motion to pass bill number 1522 was made by Councilman Krasinski. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further comments from any council member on this bill?
Mr. President, I could comment on this being our first nonprofit entity, which is probably the question Mr. Catanzarite was just going to ask. And this one, it does not have a matching requirement.
Thank you. Any other comments from any council member on 1522? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Katanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Kennerecki,
Yes.
Mr. Root, Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 1522 was passed by a vote of 8-0. May I have a motion on bill number 1722?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 1722 was made by Councilman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing
Mr. President, this one does have a matching requirement.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from any council member on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Katanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Kennerecki,
Yes.
Mr. Root, Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 1722 is passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill, bill number 1822?
An ordinance appropriating monies from the American Rescue Plan Fund to the Office of the Auditor for St. Joseph County for the following purpose: village-to-village oasis project.
May I have a motion on bill 1822?
Move passage.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 1822 was made by Councilman Kanaricki. It was seconded by Councilman Catanzarite. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Katanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Kennerecki,
Yes.
Mr. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
The record show that bill number 1822 was passed by a vote of 8-0. May I have a motion on bill number 1922?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 1922 was made by Councilman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Kennerecki,
Yes.
Mr. Root, Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Katanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 1922 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, I'm sorry, may I have a motion on bill number 2022?
Move passage.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 2022 was made by Councilman Kanaricki. It was seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further council discussion on 2022? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Katanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Kennerecki,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
The record show that bill number 20-22 is passed by a vote of 8-0. May I have a motion on bill number 2122?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second? Motion to pass bill number 2122 was made by Councilwoman Hess. It was seconded by Councilman Krasinski. Any further council discussion on 2122? Hearing none, will you please take the roll, sir?
Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki.
Yes.
Mr. Root. Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 2122 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill, bill number 2222? I'm sorry, may I have a motion on bill 2222?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 2222 is made by Councilwoman Hess. It was seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further comments on this bill from any council member? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Nolan.
Dalton had his hand raised or something?
Mr. Dalton, did you want to make a comment, sir?
This is a match, right, Steve?
This is a match. The Center for the Homeless is a 50-50 match.
Thank you.
Any other comments from any council member on 2222? Any other comments? Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki.
Yes.
Mr. Root. Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
The record show that bill number 2222 was passed by a vote of 8-0. May I have a motion on bill number 2322?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 2322 was made by Councilman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilman Krasinski. Any further comments from any council member on this bill? Hearing none. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki.
Yes.
Mr. Root.
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
The record show that bill number 2322 was passed by a vote of 8-0. May I have a motion on bill number 2422?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 2422 was made by Councilwoman Hess. It was seconded by Councilman Kanaricki. Any other comments from council on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki.
Yes.
Mr. Root.
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Carries 8-0.
The record show that bill number 2422 was passed by a vote of 8-0. May I have a motion on bill number 2522?
Motion for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 2522 was made by Councilman Krasinski. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki.
Yes.
Mr. Root.
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 2522 is passed by a vote of 8-0. May I have a motion on bill number 2622?
For approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 2622 was made by Councilwoman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this bill?
Mr. Morton.
Mr. Catanzarite.
If I can get Mr. Dalton to comment just as far as the subrecipient agreement about this one, where we're at with it.
My understanding, Councilman, that the intent of the council on this specific grant is that the portion that goes to the hotelier, the owner of the motel, will be a 100% direct grant because it's a county expense. But the portion that goes to Our Lady will be restricted to the 50-50 matching requirements that is being used by all the other subrecipients.
Okay, and just on the hotelier, is he getting all of the money up front, or is it going to be billed monthly, or what?
Mr. Hammond, can you speak to that? I don't actually know the mechanics.
I don't remember. So Sheila, do you know if he gets it monthly?
Monthly?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That was the recommendation from the council. That's what we wanted, yes.
I agree.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Kennerecki?
Yes.
Mr. Root?
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski?
Yes.
Mr. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. File?
Aye.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 2622 is passed by a vote of 8-0. May I have a motion on bill number 2722? May I have a motion on bill number 2722?
Move passage.
Do I hear a second? Motion to pass bill number 2722 was made by Councilman Canaricki. It was seconded by Councilman Catanzarite. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Root?
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski?
Yes.
Mr. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. File?
Aye.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Kennerecki?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
That carries 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 2722 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Next on the agenda, land use planning. Clerk, will you please read bill number 14221?
An ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Uses, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for addressed and unaddressed property totaling 1.42 more or less acres located at and abutting 12700 State Road 23 and 12685 State Road 23 from C Commercial District, site plan specific, and B Business District to C Commercial District, not site plan specific. Petitioner Johnny T. LLC and Limberpoolis Real Estate Holding LLC.
Thank you. Mr. Nolan, committee report, please, sir.
Mr. President, bill number 142-21 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, area plan?
Good evening, this is Ryan Fellows with Area Plan Commission, offices on the 11th floor of this building, part of the Department of Infrastructure Planning and Growth, offices on the 7th and 11th floor of this building. The proposed rezoning is along State Route 23 between Princess Way and Herbert Street near Bittersweet. There are 3 parcels proposed to be rezoned. These are outlined in blue. The eastern parcel is zoned B Business District. The northern and western parcels were rezoned in 1985 to C Commercial District per a final site plan. The green dots on this map show that the rezonings, all the rezonings in this area that were done per a final site plan. This shows that the practice was common. This particular property was not rezoned per a final site plan due to a unique circumstance for this property. Here's an image of the property located at 12707 State Route 23, which contains an automotive repair facility, associated parking. You can also see a billboard here. And then the neighboring property, which is Zone B Business District currently, is at 12685 State Route 23. It is a site of a former restaurant. If the rezoning is successful, the restaurant building would be demolished and an automotive repair building would be extended to the east. Here's State Route 23 looking east and looking south. And there's west. And here's the final site plan from 1985. And then this would be what the proposed rezoning area would be for the current site plan. Per state law, rezoning is considered based on 5 criteria, including the comprehensive plan. No one offered any remonstrance before or during the Area Plan Commission meeting. The Area Plan Commission unanimously approved a favorable recommendation for this rezoning. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the petitioner is available to speak on this as well.
Thank you. Any questions from council for area plan? Thank you. Petitioner?
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Schaefer with Avonmarsh. For the record, our office is 315 West Jefferson in South Bend, representing Johnny T LLC, which does business as TMT Automotive. As Ryan explained, TMT Automotive has purchased the adjoining property and would like to expand their business onto the adjoining property. I can answer any questions you have.
Any questions from council for the petitioner? Thank you. Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing on bill number 14221. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on bill 14221. Do I hear a motion?
Motion for passage.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 14221 was made by Councilman Catanzarite. It was seconded by Councilman Kanaricki. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll? My bad. We are at Mr. Krasinski. Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Kanaricki.
Yes.
Mr. Root.
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. Let the record show that bill number 142-21 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill, bill number 14321? An ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Uses, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for addressed and unaddressed property at 0.27 acres parcels located at 54386 Palmer Street, across the street, and 80 feet south along Palmer Street from R Single Family District to U University District. Petitioner, University of Notre Dame, Duloc. Mr. Nolan, committee report, please, sir.
Mr. President, bill number 143-21 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. Area plan?
Ryan Fellows again. The proposed rezoning site is along Palmer Street, south of Beulah Road, and west of Twinkingham Drive. There are 4 parcels proposed to be rezoned. They're outlined in blue. Palmer Street has 4 privately owned parcels with single-family homes on them, zoned our single-family district, and the remaining property in this area is owned by the University of Notre Dame, predominantly zoned U University District. Here's a bird's eye view with the north to the left. Beulah Road parking lot to the east is on the top, and Leahy Drive is on the west, which is on the bottom of the screen. Looking east on, here's a southeastern lot proposed for rezoning. The northeastern lot. The house was recently demoed here. And here we have the western 2 lots proposed to be rezoned with Palmer Street in the background. Trees were recently cleared from this property. And looking north on Palmer and south. The site plan shows 2 asphalt parking lots, including a total of 141 spaces. Trees shown are in conformance with the county zoning ordinance. Double evergreen rows are shown along the residentially zoned and used property lines. The site plan notes indicate that stormwater drainage capacity, landscaping, and as applicable signage and site lighting will be provided per county standards. You will notice on this site plan, it is slightly different than that which was presented at the committee meeting. In this particular site plan, the parking lot that's on the west side shows an access drive coming off from Leahy Drive instead of off from Palmer Street. This was in response to the concerns that the neighbors in the area had spoken during the Area Plan Commission meeting. And then through consultation with the university and their consultant, they came up with this as a good solution to take away that traffic that would come to Palmer Street. And then just as before, the parking lot that's on the eastern side would continue to be accessed from the existing Beulah parking lot. So per state law, this rezoning is considered, is to be judged based off from 5 criteria, including the comprehensive plan. There were 5 people who offered a remonstrance during the Area Plan Commission meeting. The Area Plan Commission voted 8-1 to favorably recommend this rezoning to you. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council for area plan? Petitioner?
Thank you. Mike Danch from Danch, Harner & Associates, 1643 Carmus Drive here in South Bend, representing the University of Notre Dame. Tim Sexton is with me this evening, as well as Doug Marsh, the campus architect, just in case there's some other questions that council members may have. Ryan did a great job of explaining what we were doing. As the main part, what he did mention is that we have provided a revised site plan from what was seen at the Land Use Planning Committee meeting. We did take into account some of the neighbors' concerns about any traffic that may be going down Palmer Street, and what we did was we redesigned that west parking lot, as Ryan had said, to have direct access onto Leahy Drive. The other parking lot to the east side of Palmer would only have access to the large parking lot that is just to the east of what you see there and west of Twickenham Drive and south of Bulla. What we're asking for, as Brian had mentioned, is rezoning some of the parcels that you see here. On the east parking lot that we've got, the middle portion of the property is already zoned U University. What we were asking to do is the ones on either side of that to be rezoned to U University to allow for the additional parking. The campus right now is going under basically a lot of planning. There are new buildings being proposed. On the west side of Leahy Street, there's some additional buildings that will be placed there. As of right now, just in that particular location of the campus, there'll be a loss of 300 parking spaces for the new buildings that will go in. That doesn't include also the staff and everyone else that would be going into those new buildings. So what you're seeing here is the effort by the university to go ahead and try to centralize some of the parking areas in those areas for the new buildings. And these are adjacent to that large parking lot that we had talked about earlier at the Land Use Planning Committee meeting. That's one of the main reasons that we're trying to do this kind of planning. And again, we did take into account the residents' concerns, and we have taken away all access to Palmer Street. The other issue that we've done here that's not required by the ordinance, but we're still doing it, is that we're providing what's called Type B landscaping between any of our parking areas and where there are existing homes. So on that east parking lot that you see on the east side of Palmer Street, there is an existing home that's there. The parking lot itself will be set back 20 feet from that, along with the landscaping, which are 2 rows of evergreen trees that you see there. On the parking lot to the west, again, there's a house to the north, same type of landscaping, the 20-foot buffer with the evergreen trees that you see. There is also a house at the very end of Palmer Street. That house has just changed hands as of November of 2021 to a new party. My understanding is that the university had conversations with the party that is going into that house, and they also were aware of this parking that was proposed for this particular area. Again, what we did for that house as well is add the additional landscaping that wasn't required by the ordinance, but we're still doing that. The other items that we had brought up at the Land Use Planning Committee meeting was that if there is any lighting, security lighting that would happen for these two parking areas, it has to meet the county requirements. Basically, that just means shielded lighting so that you don't have any light spillage onto any of the adjacent properties. There was also a concern, I believe, raised at the Plan Commission meeting, and we addressed at the land use meeting. Along the eastern portion of Palmer Street where we have residential properties, between the residential properties and the large parking lot, some of the evergreen trees that the university had put in had died, and we had mentioned at the land use meeting that we will replace those as well. There are areas on the campus, especially around this particular location, that we had mentioned where the campus contractor had gone in and put 10-foot high fencing. And we said that as part of the process for doing the new parking areas, we would take any of those fencing down to the maximum size, which under the ordinance for university is 8 foot. So we would do that. Any kind of security fencing on Palmer Street, between Palmer Street, the public right-of-way, and where the parking areas would be, that's limited to just 4-foot high fencing, and we would maintain that as well. From a drainage standpoint, any drainage that you see here will not be going on to any adjacent property. We had mentioned that there is a large retention basin that is on that east parking lot that is at the very south end of it. Any of the surface runoff on these two parking lots would be piped to that drainage area. Again, that'll meet the drainage standards for the county, which is 5.6-inch rainfall, so that handles a tremendous amount of water. And we're required to show any kind of plans to the county engineering department for approval that show that there would be no excess water coming off the parking lots onto any adjacent property. So that has to be shown as part of the final site plan procedure. I think everything else that we had mentioned is the same, but if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them, or for the university.
Any questions from council for the petitioner?
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Krasinski?
Mike?
Yeah.
Did you mention Palmer Street, or is there any improvements going to be done to Palmer Street itself?
No, not as part of this, because if you remember what we had done was, we said that when we had presented the plans to the county, there were no comments from the county engineering department. But since what we are doing now is taking all traffic for these two particular parking areas and putting it on to Leahy Drive, which is the paved private street within the university, and over to the parking lot to the east, which is university property, there shouldn't be any additional traffic going on to Palmer Street. That doesn't mean at some point, though, that the county could take a look at that, and as part of the annual kind of the subdivision things that they do for improvements for Palmer Street, that they couldn't be done at some point in time.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner from council?
More of a comment, if I may. Appreciate yourself and the petitioners listening to the neighbors, and I think this is a great solution, and you actually checked off every item I had to ask you, so I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from council?
Okay.
Thank you, sir. We will now open the public hearing on bill number 14321. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Dr. Robert Francis Smith. I'm one of the owners of a property on Palmer Street, and I have a major complaint to direct at Notre Dame. They have just wrecked my speech. And so I want to say thank you to the council, thank you to Notre Dame. They have relieved us of one of our major concerns, the major concern that we had, and I think I have nothing left to say. Just thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition of 14321? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on 14321?
For approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass Bill number 14321 was made by Councilman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilman Krasinski. Any further comments on this bill from council? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take?
Mr. Morton.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Want to make a brief announcement or a comment. I am an employee of the University of Notre Dame, and I do plan on voting on this, but I have no pecuniary interest, no matter how I vote on this, so I just want to make that clear. It's been advised by our legal counsel I should at least divulge that when I vote on this.
You're not getting free parking out of this?
No, no free parking. I still have to park 2 blocks away from where I work.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll? Mr. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. File?
Aye.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki?
Yes.
Mr. Root?
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski?
Yes.
And Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 14321 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill, bill number 4-22?
An ordinance of the St. Joseph County Council amending Title 15, Chapter 154, Land Usage of St. Joseph County Code to add contractor yard as a permitted use in the C Commercial District and revise outdoor storage development standards in C Commercial District. Petitioner, St. Joseph County Area Plan Commission.
Mr. Nolan, committee report, please, sir.
Mr. President, bill number, wait a minute, 4-22 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. Petitioner?
All right. Abby Wiles, Area Plan Commission Director, offices on the 11th floor of this building. This text amendment adds contractor yards and offices as a special use in the commercial district. It's presently only permitted in the industrial district, and we, as staff, feel that it would be appropriate to allow this use as a special use that would ultimately come to you for approval, because the full range of uses in certain properties wouldn't be appropriate if it were to zone to industrial. Better to allow them in the C and review them on a special case-by-case basis. And the second part of the amendment allows for outdoor storage of up to 50% of the gross lot area for this use, as well as similar uses in the district. And this is required in excess of 20% of the gross lot, requires landscaping screening from the right-of-way office, business, commercial districts, as well as the residential districts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from council? For Ms. Wiles? Hearing none, we'll open a public hearing on Bill 422. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on 422. Do I hear a motion?
Move for passage.
Do I hear a second? Motion to pass bill number 422 was made by Councilman Catanzarite. It was seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. File?
Aye.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Kenrecki?
Yes.
Mr. Root?
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski? Mr. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 422 is passed by a vote of 8-0. Next on the agenda, miscellaneous items. Next, unfinished business. Next, new business. Next item, privilege of the floor, limited to 3 minutes to items not on tonight's agenda.
Good evening, Dan Caruso, 305 Compton Street, New Carlisle. In the words of Hannibal Smith, I love it when a plan comes together. I would also love it when that same consideration is given to, and I don't expect it not to be, given to the development plans in New Carlisle, that we look at the impact on the residents. We look at how we will be impacted with the IEC, with all the development that I was at a meeting earlier today of the Redevelopment Commission, and was a little disheartened to hear that we've got all these plans to spend all this money, particularly in the Indiana development area, number one and two, which are the New Carlisle areas. And when Mr. Gripe from the Redevelopment Commission questioned Jeff Ray, who was speaking about all the great things going on over our way, Mr. Gripe asked him, give me your top 3 accomplishments so far. And you could tell Jeff was stumped. All he could come up with was Unifracs. They got that electric battery thing. And he used that example 3 different times. So we're closing on $15 million we've been spent on land acquisitions, on appraisals, on rezonings, everything, $15 million. And also Jeff said that there's really nobody that's signed a line yet, but we expect it at any time, and we're just waiting, and Unifracs. Please give us, the residents in Olive Township and New Carlisle, this same consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Lovely work you did tonight. Thank you very much. I read this poem by Wendell Berry at the commissioners' meeting, and it was suggested that I should read it here. By Wendell Berry.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Could you
Sure.
please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah. Deborah Doral, 21677 Otten Road, South Bend. Okay. So the reassurer. A people in the throes of national prosperity who breathe poisoned air, drink poisoned water, eat poisoned food, who take poisoned medicines to heal them of the poisons that they breathe, drink, and eat. Such a people crave the further poison of official reassurance. It is not logical, but it is understandable. Perhaps that they adore the president who tells them that all is well, all is better than ever. The president reassures the farmer and his wife who have exhausted their farm to pay for it and have exhausted themselves to pay for it and have not paid for it and have gone bankrupt for the sale of the free market, foreign trade, and the prosperity of corporations. He consoles the Navajos who have been exiled from their place of exile because the poor land contains something required for the national prosperity, after all. He consoles the young woman dying of cancer caused by a substance used in the normal course of national prosperity to make red apples redder. He consoles the couple in the Kentucky coal fields who sit watching TV in their mobile home on the mud floor of a mined-out strip mine. From his smile, they understand that the fortunate have a right to their fortunes and that the unfortunate have a right to their misfortunes, and that these are equal rights. The president smiles with a disarming smile of a man who has seen God and found him a true American, not overbearingly smart. The president reassures the chairman of the board of the Humane Health for Profit Corporation of America, who knows in his replaceable heart that health, if it came, would bring financial ruin. He reassures the chairman of the board of the Victory and Honor for Profit Corporation of America, who has been wakened in the night by a dream of the calamity of peace. These issues of which Wendell Berry writes remain prevalent in our county, and solutions for which much of our government is supported by our democratic process, regardless of party. I sincerely hope the funds that the commissioners have spent and the funds and the negotiations to which the council is pursuing build solutions to drawing equitable lines for residents and their representatives across the board and across aisles, sets a much needed direction for future cooperation and equitable solutions for our time and population. I support and continue to encourage you and other caring citizens in doing just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to take advantage of privilege of the floor?
Hi. I just wanted to note for everyone's benefit that the code enforcement public meeting that was originally scheduled for Zoom last week on Wednesday, February 2nd will be tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. All of the information should be on the website. Again, final public comment meeting for the code enforcement program will be tomorrow, 6 to 8 p.m. on Zoom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to take advantage of privilege of the floor this evening? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned.
I'm fine. I can wait around. Thank you all. Thank you.
Looks like I'm not going to get an email from you. Okay.
I'm telling you, it's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you. I appreciate it. I'm Sarah from Community Gardens, and I'm so grateful. Yeah.
Going here.
I know, don't worry about it. Take your time.
Johnny T. LLC.
I mean, we're not in any rush or anything.
I really swear to God.
I mean, I just want to stay here longer.